Check. преблагословенную, славную Владычицу нашу Богородицу и присно Деву Марию со всеми святыми помянувши, сами себе и друг друга, и весь живот наш Христу Богу предадим.
Отцу и Сыну и Святому Духу, ныне и присно и во веки веков.
Can't find the right image. So forgive me when we're wrong without an image. I think. It's this one. No. Yeah. So continuing with the triads. But he does not consider that the vision of which he has been deemed worthy is simply the divine nature, just as the soul communicates life to the animated body, and we call this life soul, while realizing that this soul which is in us and which communicates life to the body is distinct from that life. So God, who dwells in the God-bearing soul, communicates the light to it. Over the union of God, the cause of all, with those worthy transcends that light. God, while remaining entirely in himself, dwells entirely in us by his superessential power, and communicates to us not his nature, but his proper glory and splendor. The light is thus divine, and the saints rightly call it divinity, because it is the source of deification. It is not only divinity, but deification in itself, and thearchy. While it appears to produce a distinction and multiplication within the one God, yet it is nonetheless the divine principle, more than God and more than principle. The light is one in the one divinity, and therefore is itself the divine principle, more than God and more than principle, since God is the ground of subsistence of divinity. The doctors of the Church Thus, the doctors of the Church, following the great Areopagite Dionysius, calls divinity, quote unquote, the deifying gift that proceeds from God. So when Gaius asked Dionysius how God could be beyond the thearchy, he replied in his letter, if you consider as divinity the reality of the deifying gift which divinizes us, and if this gift is the principle of divinization, then he who is above all principle is also above what you call thus divinity. So the fathers tell us that the divine grace of the suprasensible light is God. But God in his nature does not simply identify himself with this grace, because he is able not only to illumine and deify the mind, but also to bring forth from non-being every intellectual essence. Part C, the Hesychast method of prayer and the transformation of the body. My brother, do you not hear the words of the Apostle? Our bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit, which is in us. And again, we are the house of God. For God himself says, I will dwell in them and will walk in them, and I shall be their God. So why should anyone who possesses mind grow indignant at the thought that our mind dwells in that whose nature it is to become the dwelling place of God? How can it be that God at the beginning caused the mind to inhabit the body? Did even he do ill? Rather, brother, such views befit the heretics, who claim that the body is an evil thing, a fabrication of the wicked one. Excuse me. As for us, we think the mind becomes evil through dwelling on fleshly thoughts, but that there is nothing bad in the body, since the body is not evil in itself. If the apostle calls the body death, saying, who will deliver me from the body of this death? This is because the material and corporeal thought does really have the form of the body. Then, comparing it to spiritual and divine ideas, he justly calls it body, yet not simply body, but body of death. Further on, he makes it even clearer that what he is attacking is not the body, but the sinful desire that entered in because of the fall. I am sold to sin, he says, but he who is sold is not a slave by nature. And again, I well know that what is good does not dwell in me, that is, in the flesh. You note that he does not say the flesh is evil, but what inhabits it. Likewise, there is nothing evil in the fact that the mind indwells the body. What is evil is, quote, the law which is in our members, which fights against the law of the mind. This is why we set ourselves against this law of sin and drive it out of the body, installing in its place the oversight of the mind, and in this way establishing a law appropriate for each power of the soul and for every member of the body. For the senses we ordain the object and limit of their scope, this work of the law being called temperance. In the affective part of the soul, we bring about the best state, which bears the name love, and we improve the rational part by rejecting all that impedes the mind from elevating itself towards God. This part of the law we call watchfulness. He who has purified his body by temperance, who by divine love has made an occasion of virtue from his wishes and desires, who has presented to God a mind purified by prayer, acquires and sees in himself the grace promised to those whose hearts have been purified. He can then say with Paul, God, who has ordered light to shine from darkness, has made his light to shine in our hearts, in order that we may be enlightened by the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. But he adds, we carry this treasure in earthen vessels. So we carry the Father's light in the face of Jesus Christ in earthen vessels, that is, in our bodies, in order to know the glory of the Holy Spirit. Shall we be treating the greatness of the mind unworthily if we guard our own mind within the body? What man, I do not say spiritual man, endowed with human intelligence, would say that, even if bereft of divine grace? Our soul is a unique reality, yet possessing multiple powers. It uses as an instrument the body, which by nature coexists with it. But as for that power of the soul we call mind, what instruments does that use in its operations? No one has ever supposed that the mind has its seat in the nails or the eyelids, the nostrils, or the lips. Everyone is agreed in locating it within us, but there are differences of opinion as to which inner organ serves the mind as primary instrument. Some place the mind in the brain, as in a kind of acropolis. Others hold that its vehicle is the very center of the heart, and that the element therein which is purified of the breath of animal soul. We ourselves know exactly that our rational part is not confined within us as in a container, for it is incorporeal, nor is it outside of us, for it is conjoined to us, but it is in the heart as in an instrument. We did not learn this from any man, but from him who molded man, who showed that, quote, it is not what goes into a man that defiles a man, but what goes out by the mouth, adding, for it is from the heart that evil thoughts come. And the great Macarius says also, the heart directs the entire organism, and when grace gains possession of the heart, it reigns over all the thoughts and all the members, for it is there, in the heart, that the mind and all the thoughts of the soul have their seat. Thus, our heart is the place of the rational faculty, the first rational organ of the body. Consequently, when we seek to keep watch over and correct our reason by a rigorous sobriety, with what are we to keep watch if we do not gather together our mind, which has been dissipated abroad by the senses, and lead it back again into the interior, to the selfsame heart, which is the seat of the thoughts? This is why the justly named Macarius immediately goes on to say, it is there one must look to see if grace has inscribed the laws of the Spirit. Where but in the heart, the controlling organ, the throne of grace, where the mind and all the thoughts of the soul are to be found. Can you not see, then, how essential it is that those who have determined to pay attention to themselves in inner quiet should gather together the mind and enclose it in the body, and especially in that body most interior to the body, which we call the heart? For if, as the psalmist says, all the glory of the king's daughter is within, why do we search for it without? And if, according to the apostle, God has given his Spirit to cry in our hearts, Abba, Father, how is it we too do not pray with the Spirit in our hearts? If, as the Lord of the prophets and apostles teaches, the kingdom of God is within us, does it not follow that a man will be excluded from the kingdom if he devotes his energies to making his mind go out from within himself? For the upright heart, Solomon says, seeks that sense which he elsewhere calls spiritual and divine, which the fathers urge us all to acquire, saying, the spiritual mind seeks ever to acquire a spiritual sense, but does not cease to seek that sense, since it is in us, yet not in us. Do you not see that if one desires to combat sin and acquire virtue, to find the reward of the struggle for virtue, or rather the intellectual sense, earnest of that reward, one must force the mind to return within the body and oneself. On the other hand, to make the mind go out, quote unquote, not only from fleshly thoughts, but out of the body itself, with the aim of contemplating intelligible visions, that is the greatest of the Hellenic errors, the root and source of all heresies, an invention of demons, a doctrine which engenders folly and is itself the product of madness. This is why those who speak by demonic inspiration become beside themselves, not knowing what they are saying. As for us, we recollect the mind not only within the body and heart, but also within itself. There are, however, those who assert that the mind is not separate from the soul, but is interior to it, and who therefore question how it can be recalled within. It would seem such people are unaware that the essence of the mind is one thing, its energy another. Or rather, they are well aware of this, and prefer to range themselves within the deceitful, and prevaricate over an ambiguity. For such men, sharpened to controversy by dialectic, do not accept the simplicity of the spiritual doctrine, as the great Basil says. They pervert the force of truth by the antitheses of false knowledge, aided by the persuasion or persuasive arguments of sophistry. End quote. Such, indeed, are those who, without being spiritual themselves, consider themselves fit to decide and teach spiritual matters. Has it not occurred to them that the mind is like the eye, which sees other visible objects, but cannot see itself? The mind operates in part according to its function of external observation. This is what the great Dionysius calls the movement of the eye, of the mind, the movement of the mind along a straight line. And on the other hand, it returns upon itself when it beholds itself. This movement the same father calls circular. This last is the most excellent and most appropriate activity of the mind, by which it comes to transcend itself and be united to God. For the mind, says St. Basil, which is not dispersed abroad, notice how he says dispersed. What is dispersed, then, needs to be recollected. Quote continuing, returns to itself, and through itself mounts towards God, end quote, as by an infallible road. Dionysius, that unerring contemplator of intelligible things, says also that this movement of the mind cannot succumb to any error. The father of lies is always desiring to lead man towards those errors which he himself promotes. But up to now, as far as we know, he has found no collaborator who has tried to lead others to this goal by good words. But today, if what you tell me is true, it seems he has found accomplices who have even composed treatises towards this end, and who seek to persuade men, even those who have embraced the higher life of hesychasm, that it would be better for them to keep the mind outside of the body during prayer. They do not even respect the clear and authoritative words of John, who writes in his Ladder of Divine Ascent, "The hesychast is one who seeks to circumscribe the incorporeal in his body." This is exactly the tradition, and our spiritual fathers have also handed it down to us, and rightly so. For if the hesychast does not circumscribe the mind in his body, how can he make to enter himself the one who has clothed himself in the body, and who thus penetrates all organized matter insofar as he is its natural form? For the external aspect and divisibility of matter is not compatible with the essence of the mind, unless matter itself truly begins to live, having acquired a form of life conformable to the union with Christ. You see, brother, how John teaches us that it is enough to examine the matter in a human, let alone a spiritual, manner, to see that it is absolutely necessary to recall or keep the mind within the body when one determines to be truly in possession of oneself and to be a monk worthy of the name according to the inner man. On the other hand, it is not out of place to teach people, especially beginners, that they should look at themselves and introduce their own mind within themselves through control of breathing. A prudent man will not forbid someone who does not as yet contemplate himself to use certain methods to recall his mind within himself. For those newly approaching excuse me, this struggle find that their mind, when recollected, continually becomes dispersed again. It is thus necessary for such people constantly to bring it back once more, but in their inexperience they fail to grasp that nothing in the world is in fact more difficult to contemplate and more mobile and shifting than the mind. This is why certain masters recommend them to control the movement inwards and outwards of the breath, and to hold it back a little. In this way they will also be able to control the mind together with the breath. This, at any rate, until such time as they have made progress, with the aid of God, have restrained the intellect from becoming distracted by what surrounds it, have purified it, and truly become capable of leading it to a unified recollection. One can state that this recollection is a spontaneous effect of the attention of the mind, for the to and fro movement of the breath becomes quietened during intensive reflection, especially with those who maintain inner quiet in body and soul. Such men, in effect, practice a spiritual Sabbath and, as far as is possible, cease from all personal activity. They strip the cognitive powers of the soul of every changing, mobile, and diversified operation, of all sense perceptions, and, in general, of all corporal activity that is under our control, as to acts which are not entirely under our control, like breathing. These they restrain as far as possible. In the case of those who have made progress in hesychasm, all this comes to pass without painful effort and without their worrying about it, for the perfect entry of the soul within itself spontaneously produces such inner detachment. But with beginners, none of these things comes about without toil, for patience is a fruit of love, for love bears all, quote, and teaches us to practice patience with all our strength in order to attain love. And this is a case in point. But why delay over these matters? Everyone who has the experience can only laugh at the contradictions of the inexperienced, for they have learnt not through words but effort, and the experience which indicates the pains they take, it is effort which brings the useful fruits and challenges the sterile views of the lovers of disputation and ostentation. One of the great masters teaches, quote, after the transgression, the inner man naturally is conformed to external forms. Thus the man who seeks to make his mind return to itself needs to propel it not only in a straight line but also in the circular motion that is infallible. How should such a one not gain great profit if, instead of letting his eye roam hither and thither, he should fix it on his breast or on his navel as a point of concentration? For in this way he will not only gather himself together externally, conforming as far as possible to the inner movement he seeks for his mind, he will also, by disposing his body in such a position, recall into the interior of the heart a power which is ever flowing outwards through the faculty of sight. And if the power of the intelligible animal is situated at the center of the belly, since there the law of sin exercises its rule and gives it sustenance, why should we not place there the law of the mind which combats this power, duly armed with prayer, so that the evil spirit who has been driven away, thanks to the bath